got a question. Ask Tom on Home Show Radio.
This is Home Show Radio live on Facebook and YouTube. Your questions, Tom's answers. Now here's Tom Tynan and Charlie Mosier.
Yay, that sounded like at least 8 people. Twice. Okay. Once was enough. Twice, maybe not. Anyway, hello everybody. I'm Tom Tynan, and someone might have a new toy. I'll just ignore it and move along and tell everybody that I'm the home improvement guy. I don't know what else to call myself. They used to use the word guru, expert. I'm just into home improvements. I'm a builder. I've been fixing things, building things, and training people how to do exactly that for practically my whole life. So we welcome you here. I've been on the radio for almost 35 years now in the Houston area, answering people's home improvement questions, which I do every Saturday from 9 to noon and Sunday 8 to 11. And of course, we have a full cast of characters that do that on the radio, including Danny Milliken, who is 7 to 9 in the morning before me on Saturdays. And you can always catch both of us and all we do on Sports Radio 610. Or you can visit us at our website, homeshowradio.com. And of course, you can stream us and do all those good things. And I'm sure there's other ways to catch us. And Charlie gonna chime in here in a minute, and he can help me with all the different ways you can listen to the show, as well as every Thursday. Hello, Charlie. We are here answering your questions.
And there's no cure to Tom Tynan. So just...
There's a vaccine, I hear.
There
yes. It's only one shot. It's called turn them off. Just turn it off. There's the vaccine.
That's it. You just turn that knob off. Yeah, no.
That's it.
It's great to see y'all. Thank you all for being here today. And let's see, so far, Bruce has checked in so far.
Hello, Bruce.
And appreciate him being here. Appreciate you being here. You go to homeshowradio.com or the Home Show Radio page on Facebook. That's how we'll know you're here. And if you have questions and you're on the Home Show Radio Facebook or YouTube channel and you put your questions in the comment area below, we'll be able to process them and have them as part of the program. And that's part near what we do when we do the show.
That's what we do. So, and if we don't have any, we make them up.
That's it. And
Yes.
and we try to come up with ones Tom can answer. Tom?
Charlie has cocktail parties, and they say, okay, if you need a cocktail, you have to give me a question. And then he writes them down, and we answer them.
That's right. Tom, your question today is, tell me something good about foam insulation.
It'll float.
Okay. All right. We like to start the show off with a little news you can use, so we call
There
it
you go.
Home Show Radio. What's new? Around the world and up your block with things that can help you around your house. And today's topic that we've got is 4 ways to navigate high lumber prices. This morning, the Wall Street Journal reported that consumer goods climbed again in May. They're up another 5%.
5%.
From a year ago, which is the highest inflation rate in nearly 13 years.
Since 2008, to be exact.
Yes. Why would that be? Golly, I couldn't hazard a guess. But over the past year, though, the cost of lumber's increased 430%. It's gone from $259 per 1,000 board feet to over $1,300, according to a survey from...
Yeah, I see those numbers fluctuate all the time, but that's a good range right there. That shows exactly what's going on with the lumber.
What does that mean, Tom, in terms of a package for a home, building the lumber package for a home? What do you suppose the impact on that is?
Well, the lumber package is going to go up 400%. I mean, it works exactly like that because plywood, 2x4s, 2x12s, everything's sold in board foot. And I'm not going to get into that because it's 6 inch by 6 inch by 12 inches. It's weird how the formula works, but that's how the lumber industry works. And so that percentage, no matter what lumber product you buy, whatever lumber product it is, and people think, oh, it's just the framing materials and maybe the roof decking. But cabinetry, interior doors, anything that's wood, baseboards, crown mold, all of that has gone up that percentage. So you can imagine how much that would be on a house, depending on how big the house is and how decorative and how much wood product you have in the finishes. So that'll fluctuate with different homes. If it's real simple, you keep your costs down, but it's still high.
So what we did is I went out and found a little article, and actually, Tim down the hallway found this article about from Better Homes and Garden, or as we said,
soon to be bitter.
Bitter.
Yes,
in February, they were bitter homes and gardens, but now,
Yes.
but they're better now, as is the bank accounts of most garden centers. But we have 4 ways to help you save money, navigate these high prices, and these come from the pages of Better Homes and Gardens, so don't judge me. Number 1 is to plan ahead, and what they said is make sure you have a scope of work on a project, and that is what you want to make sure is that you've carefully measured the lumber so you eliminate as much waste as you can in planning your project. You agree with that one, Tom?
I do agree with that one. The scope of work's important. Finding out what your dimensions are. If you're doing things that are 6 foot, that means you're going to lose. You buy lumber in 8 foot lengths, you're going to lose 2 feet. Try to work it in to where it's 4 foot or 8 foot or 16 foot or 12 foot, because it tends to work that way with nominal lumber, 2x4s and whatnot. So know your lumber sizes that you're going to buy before you plan your project.
And plan your house accordingly. So what you're saying is when you're working with an architect, or if you're designing something you're doing yourself, you should really take those kind of things into account on how big or it's going to have some impact on the project, on the overall size of the project.
Yeah, and when it comes to the architect and stuff and what they're designing, that goes beyond a homeowner. But if you're going to be planning and building a deck,
Right.
fences,
Exactly.
gazebos, outdoor areas, let's say the typical homeowner, that's when you can really sit and plan. Does it need to be 10 foot or can we make it 12? Use all the lumber. Or is 8 foot enough? Then you don't have to buy 10 or 12 foot lumber. So you're looking at that and planning it to where you cut very little and you don't have a lot of waste, because that waste is a board foot. We used to have a joke back in the construction industry where if somebody took a piece of lumber out of the scrap pile and it was worth more than a tall boy, it had to go in the house somewhere. We're not going to waste it. And so we got away from that, and a tall boy being a tall beer, by the way. People
okay, thank you.
don't know what that is anymore. This was my younger days. But that was the going joke, and in a way it was true. No waste, put it in the house.
Find someplace to use it. All right. Second tip on this is to change the focus of your project. It's one of those things where, as Tom, this struck me as Tom's advice about the cracks in the driveway. If they're ugly, don't look down. And it's the same thing here. If you can't find wood, then maybe consider, instead of cabinets, maybe what you want to do is do update your backsplash, maybe replace the countertop, stay away from lumber, maybe even just some fresh repaint, not necessarily.
Yeah, or even a floor
cabinets.
covering, some new
Right.
tile on the floor. There's a lot of ways to do that without having to go out and buy lumber. So I never thought of that. That's actually kind of a clever idea, because there's a lot of things that didn't go up much, like ceramic tiles and stuff, so the backsplashes and things of that nature. But cabinets and stuff, that lumber, especially the hardwoods, have gone up quite a bit.
Yeah. In fact, that's one of the hitches in our giddy up of our remodeling project right now at Casa Grande over there is the wood. And it turns out it's not the wood problem, it's the, what do you call it, the polymer, whatever they use to put it together with, the goo that they put in there to make the engineered lumber. They're having a hard time that material is in
Charlie,
short supply.
Yeah, and I've said it on these Facebook Lives and on the show quite a bit. It's the resins. For some reason, and I can't get behind it,
Right.
but the resins come from India. India is going through a huge shutdown right now. And so it's not only that, but it's an electrical stuff and breaker boxes and everything. Those resins are really important. I'm not a chemist. I can't tell you beyond what I'm just hearing, but it has something to do, the shortage and the availability from the resins out of India.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, it's also anything that's petroleum based right now. You're going to have trouble with
that's true too.
because those things are in short supply. Okay, third step. We already talked about this. Okay, third one is maybe you want to consider some alternative materials. And this was a little weak in their thing, but they said one of the things you can look for is recycled wood. And for instance, if you have a building that's being torn down, go there and say, "Can I buy the lumber from you that's coming off this tear down?" That struck me as a little kind of hinky in that making any difference. Would you go to that length, Tom?
No, because when you tear a house down, they take a backhoe and they just bash it to the ground. Okay,
Yeah.
you're going to buy little chips of wood about this big. I don't know what you're going to do with it. So no, I think that's
bunch
odd.
of glue.
But yeah, but if you look at, and Charlie, we've had some. We had a certified home show pro for years on that old world lumber, where they would dismantle old barns and stuff. That was really cool. And so that's where you could get kind of recycled or old lumber that can be used as decorative pieces and things of that nature. Now, if you take a step over to things that we're familiar here in Texas with Habitat for Humanity, they have the Restore stores out there where you can buy doors and things out of lumber that are used, that people sell and donate to the Restore so they can sell them to the public and make money for Habitat for Humanity. So there's a way to get some recycled goods in. But to go to a builder who's about to smash a house down to put a new one up and say, can I go in and take all the 2x4s down? First off, they're going to say, heck no, because you'll kill yourself and you're going to sue me because the whole thing's going to fall down on you. And secondly, it's just too much time. So there's a yes and a no to that comment.
I think it's more geared to, like, if there's a barn coming down somewhere and you want to go harvest.
Well, and that's
the
that old
sheathing
world
off
lumber
that.
stuff.
Yeah, like the old world lumber guys. Yeah, and those are good guys too. That's
But you wouldn't want a builder building you a new home in a subdivision with a swimming pool and a lake and all this, and he's using lumber out of some old home built in the 50s. No, you don't want that at all.
Well,
can't imagine anybody wanting to pay for that.
There's another reason you wouldn't want to use that necessarily in construction. I mean, most of that stuff's all architectural anyway. It's not structural. But
For that, it's good, yeah.
Most importantly, you know, what they do with that wood before you take it home is they fumigate it and they kill all the bugs that are living inside that wood.
If you deal with a good company, yes.
Right. And one of the challenges we've heard that happens, and the reason why I'm told that the wood flooring that we're putting in isn't just sitting in a warehouse somewhere made in big supply. They make it in relatively short supply because beetles and things get into that wood in warehouses, and it'll come into your house, and you don't know it. You come inside, and all of a sudden you got bugs in your house. And they said that's another reason that they don't go way out on production when they're making.
And it's called the powder post beetle, I think it is.
That's it, powder post beetle.
That's right. And most of that comes from South America. I've had that on jobs where we had to tear out just beautiful staircases and stuff and rebuild the whole thing out of domestic lumber. So most of those beetles and those bugs, they come from overseas. I will say that our domestic lumber here in the United States, as little as we can get and as expensive as it is right now, is the finest quality lumber you'll buy in the entire world. Nobody has a better lumber industry than we have, even with reclaiming the forests and replanting, because they're in it for the long haul. They want more trees growing as they take them down. So we should be very proud of the United States. But those beetles will haunt you, especially in the hardwoods from South America.
Okay, another reason we should tighten up the border.
Keep the bugs out. I'm good with that. Well, you got the killer wasps, you got the angry bees, you got everybody. Go ahead, shop around.
Number 4, shop around. And this is actually kind of interesting. I never thought of this, but it actually has one of my wife's favorite shopping places on this list. They said, think outside the big box in terms of looking for lumber because it's available in all kinds of places. For instance, believe it or not, Craigslist has wood for sale. You can find it on Etsy. You can find it on eBay. I looked today. Yes, you can buy lumber on eBay. There's people selling it on there. Yeah, and you can also find lumber products available on Overstock.com and Wayfair. On Wayfair. So now I'm not sure necessarily where that lumber is coming from, but I would probably have pause before I'd go there.
Here in Houston, they have a few outlets in the Heights nobody knows about behind fences. So you might be able to go to one of those places and see Vito.
Is that lumber that fell off the back of a truck somewhere?
Yeah, or was stolen off some of my jobs 10 years ago. Yes.
All right. Well, that's our news for this week. Breaking home improvement news. That won't leave you broke next week. All right. I want to thank some folks. Do a little roll call before we get to the questions here today. We got Bruce is with us. I told you that already. Elmer is here. My buddy Elmer Dutton. I wonder if he's sitting out there with his machete just waiting for me.
Maybe.
Rockio or Rocio is here. Carl, Todd, Chris, Terry, Dolores, Linda, Mary. Thank you all for being here, for watching and being part of it. Appreciate you stopping by and being with us here today for the questions and answers. And remember, if you have one, you can put it in here, and Tom will help you with your project. In the meantime, let's get to one that comes from our mailbag at homeshowradio.com. The first one comes from Beatrice in Southwest Houston. She says, we're considering a portable 10,000 watt portable generator. We want it to power the following things: our hot water heater, our small kitchen appliances, or 2 refrigerators, one in the house and one in the garage, and a freezer, and possibly our central air conditioning. What do you say, Tom?
I think you're pushing it. I think you're really pushing it. A freezer and 2 refrigerators is a lot. You say small kitchen appliances, you turn on those burners on your cooktop. They're not that small. They're going to pull a lot of wattage. And then the air conditioning system, I don't think it's going to handle it all. I can't tell you. I'd have to look at each appliance, find out what the breakdown is. But usually when someone has a refrigerator in a garage and we lose power in August, it's 110 degrees outside, and it's 150 degrees in your garage, and you're trying to keep something at 40 degrees in the freezer, 0 degrees. It takes a lot of juice, and usually that refrigerator freezer is probably 20 years old because you didn't buy a brand new one and put it in the garage. You kept your old one, which you're not supposed to. Get rid of the old ones. But I don't think you're going to be able to do it with 10,000 watt. I think you're going to have to kick it up to at least closer to a 16, especially with a central air conditioning system. And you know what? In the wintertime, I would say you might get away for a few hours, but in the summertime, no.
Because, Tom, my understanding in talking to Bert over at KISS Generators is that folks will say, well, how much does this stuff use? And they add up all the amps that these things use and fail to understand that when they come on, there's that spike, startup spike.
And motors, refrigerators, freezers, air conditioning systems, motors. The water heater, not so much, but if it's an electric water heater, that thing, the juice starts flowing through those things like crazy. So I just don't think it's big enough. But here's the other thing, Charlie. People think, oh, I'm going to save money by getting a 10,000 and not a 14,000 or 16,000 watt to handle it. But the cost of the generator is not that great when you go up into that little range. Now, if you go past that, it starts getting, and you get into water cool units, it gets more expensive. But it's still the same installation and everything. And if you do it right, that's where the cost comes in, is the installation, running natural gas lines to it, pouring the pad, setting the unit, putting all the in-ground wiring to your breaker system and your switches inside garage or your house, wherever they're going. That's where it is. Adding a few more wattage, a little bit more power to the motor is not a big deal.
No, and so just be careful. And I just have to say, as you know, as one senior to another, that old appliances, you know, I have a freezer at home that Sandy lights candles around, hoping it'll die so we can get rid of it.
You should shoot it.
No.
Yes.
I bought a quality device, and that thing's almost 20 years old and still run like a top. So anyway, this, by the way, is from
I'm not sure what that is.
It's from my trip to Colorado. It's a senior
Sam's Club? Oh, senior.
No, it's a pass. It's a parks pass. We went out and I visited a park, and we're pulling up. And a bunch of guys I was with said, "Oh, look, it's $20 for seniors, Charlie." Ha ha ha! I said, "I bet I can get a senior discount." You got to be 62.
I thought you had to be 65. Oh, 62?
And my birthday.
Well, I could get one
May.
too now. Yeah,
you
I could get
and
one
then
now
you get
too.
to the park, and it's like a year. It's $20. It's the best deal going. So anyway, if you like national
Okay,
parks,
now there's a tip we could have done without for old people.
why?
I don't know. It makes me feel old.
Well,
My
you know,
wife goes everywhere. You know, Sandra's older than me.
Yeah.
And she's like, do I get a senior discount? Do I get a senior discount? Do I get a senior discount? She says it at Walmart. I say, no, it's Walmart.
No, but at 62, she will get the senior coffee at McDonald's.
62. She's 67.
I'm saying
She's way past
I can probably give her a latte.
Yes.
Okay. Next question.
I hope she wasn't watching.
Terry,
Okay.
no, I love it, but you know, Sandra, you know, national parks. Still
Yeah,
the
there
deal.
you go.
Terry in Alvin says, my air conditioner in the attic in my new production home is sweating a lot. We have a single-story home. What can I do to fix this problem?
I don't know what you can fix it. Anything that sweats.
Is it a problem? Is it a
It's
problem?
really, well, it could be. If he's got a air conditioning system that's getting really cold on the outside, let's say ductwork. I'm going to use that as the first example, or a plenum, which is part of the ductwork, and the insulation inside the plenum or the insulation on the ductwork is insufficient, it will start to sweat, and then the insulation gets wet. It starts to sag. It starts to sweat more. That's a problem. But the only way to fix that, no matter where you're getting sweating, is back to that koozie example I give people. You have to have, if it's metal duct, you have to have it rewrapped with a thicker insulation. Preferably an R8 is what we're doing now with all the ductwork in attics. And if your plenum is so old and you don't want to replace it, then wrap it. And I've seen situations where they've had to wrap plenums on the outside with the same kind of insulation that they use on ductwork, nice and tight, so it doesn't get cold. Because if it gets really cold in an attic that's warm, it's going to sweat. That's what happens. It's just dew point, and the vapor turns to a liquid. So if that's the case, that's the problem, then it's insulation, and that's usually what happens, and that's a problem. If you go up there and it's a really humid day, and you take your hand and you just feel a little moisture on the casing of the blower motor and stuff, don't stick your hand in the blower motor, but just on the outside. That's really not a big deal. It's pretty common to have a little bit of dew. I'll say it feels dewy on there, but it's not dripping down onto the ceiling.
Yeah, don't put your hand in there. It's like a machine or something.
Don't put your hand in there. It is like a machine.
All right, Stan has one for you. He says, if post-tension cable and rebar are in water for 1 month before install, will this compromise its longevity due to potential corrosion?
Not as far as a homeowner is concerned, as long as it's pumped out, dried before it's poured. Now, could you do a study, I'll call it a Dr. Fauci study, where you all the way down to the little minute thing and said, yes, it's going to fail 1 week earlier after 100 years? Who cares? The practicality of it is it's fine. Mm-hmm. The science says it's fine. I'm the science in this one.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. Roger, old program director would say, go to the next card, Charlie. Roger in Park Row says, is it better to put a pergola directly in the ground with concrete or gravel, or on top of a slab with brackets? What's your preference when you build one of those, Tom?
It depends. A lot of people like to put them in the ground. It's easier and quicker to build that way. If you're pouring new concrete and you can get those heavy-duty cleats, the brackets, as you say, and put them into the concrete with the proper anchor bolts so they can be bolted down, and then you build this thing to where it's freestanding, and when it's done, it's just one big structure. I like to see them in the cleats, and here's why. Because it's going to rot if you put the posts in the ground eventually. It could be a long time, but it's going to rot. And when it does, somebody's going to have to cut those posts off, and you're going to have this rotted wood right in the concrete to the ground in there, and you're just going to have this ugly hole in the concrete full of rotted wood. If you have the cleats, you can remove the cleats, cut the bolt off, and then you don't have the pergola anymore. It's just, to me, and you're able to repair a post if it gets rotted, and it also holds the post off of the concrete, so if water gets under there, it doesn't rot the post. It eventually will rot the cleat you'll have to replace. But I think in the long run, if you're pouring new concrete, I'd like to cleat it myself. Do you want to put the concrete in the ground like we do with homes, stilt homes in Galveston, for instance, on the beach? That's fine too if you pour around it. Just make sure you pour enough concrete around it to where it's not real thin and it cracks. So you need about a good foot around it, or maybe 8 inches of concrete all the way around the post so you don't get these cracks coming out if it's on a corner.
Lewis and David have checked in along with everybody else. Thank you for being here today. We're answering the questions you send us either in the comment section or by visiting homeshowradio.com and filling out the AskTom form. So we got, go to Pearland. Oh, no, that one. Did we get this? Yep, we got that one already. I'm totally out of whack here. Okay.
Go to the next slide. There you go.
Yes, here, Michael.
Yes.
Kids, don't try this at home. All right. Michael writes, I have a home built in 2001. It's time for radiant barrier. You mentioned spray-on from the attic. Who do you recommend? Is there anything efficient? I don't see radiant barrier listed in the services. I probably missed it. No, you didn't miss it. But let's talk about that and the spray-on radiant barrier, Tom, in terms of how effective it is versus the foil and how it's best to put a radiant barrier in the attic.
Yeah, it's all a radiant barrier is a must. First off, for the Houston area, Gulf Coast region, the Zone 3 area, which is Florida, the Gulf Coast in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, all the way down to Brownsville, where I am right now. Where it's hot, radiant barriers work great. They also work in desert areas like Arizona and New Mexico, things like that, where you have a lot of heat from an intense sun. So that's the first thing. If you're under sun and air conditioning is your greatest load, radiant barrier is a must. Not necessarily in northern climates because you have a lot more insulation because you deal more with colder climates. Secondly, foil is the easiest thing to do if it's on the roof decking and you're putting up a brand new home. The roof decking, you buy it with the foil on there, foil faces down, boom, the roof decking's on, no extra labor, a little bit more on materials. Unfortunately, a footnote here, it's really hard to get right now, even in the new construction end. So a lot of people are waiting to go back and spraying it because they can't get the cool plies and the Georgia Pacific products with the plywood on there, the Tech Shield. There's a lot of different names for them, but you just can't get it. They're not available. But they'll stop about 97% of the radiation from coming through, which is great. Just a single side on the bottom of the roof deck, no extra labor. Now, on an existing home, the paint is really good because you can get in areas you're not going to be able to staple foil up. So you get in there quick, you get the paint on quick with the sprayers. They have wands. They get in all the very small, hard to reach areas. They get full coverage, which is really important with a radiant barrier. That's why it's great to do it on the roof deck when you're building a new home. And the new paints, and the new ones that survived through the transition of all the different paints that started happening maybe 25 years ago, they're up to about 80% and maybe even a little more, and that's a lot. Mm-hmm. Think about it. That's a lot to stop.
I think the last one I saw was 85%.
Could be. I mean, they're constantly making them better and better because that's how they compete with the number. And it's still a lot. Even if it was 70%, it's still 70% of 80% of the heat gain that comes into a home comes through the attic, and you're stopping 70% of it. Mm-hmm. That's a lot. 97%, that's even better. But it's a huge amount of heat blockage, and that's what you're looking for. So go ahead and paint it. As far as installers, there's a lot out there. A lot of insulation companies are doing it. We don't have anybody that's on the show, but you can still find them. You could probably just Google it and find people that'll do it.
You know, Tom's referring to, of course, the if you're not in the Houston area, but he's referring to our Home Show Pros, which you'll find right there at homeshowradio.com. Scroll up a minute here, and you'll see that we got them all listed right here on the homepage. And you click on there, and it'll take you to a page and contact them, or click Find a Pro, and you can search by category, and we can help you out with that as well. Okay, one more
and these are
question
good
here.
people.
You bet. We vet them carefully. So last one today comes from Cheryl in Pearland. She says, when installing a fresh air return, where does the fresh air come from? A hole cut in the roof or in the soffit or what?
Actually, she's right on the money with her second question, or part of the question is soffit. In fact, when we did them in Galveston, in fact, I just talked to the head building inspector down there yesterday. He was asking me some home improvement questions, old David Ewald. But we would be required to put soffit vent that is specifically made for fresh air returns and also for bathroom exhausts where they hook into it so it pushes it right out the soffit. They're nice looking and they fit very well. And that's how you would do it, is a soffit. Now, in retrofit like my house, it was already built. We put one in. I just took it up to right underneath the ridge vent, which is fine. People say, oh, the hot air, it's hotter up there. Yeah, but you're pulling in very little air, and it gets through a filter. It goes through the air conditioning process. Before it gets into your home, it's filtered and it's conditioned, whether it's heated or cooled. Doesn't matter what time of year it is. So it just replaces what little loss you get in your ductwork. So you can do that too, but don't penetrate the roof with a special vent. If you have vents of any kind and you want to go up, it's easier, because mine's 1.5 stories, it was for me. Just take a nail and put the vent up against the rafter, put a nail on there, just leave it open, make sure it goes through a filter, like a media filter, and then goes through the system before it gets into the house.
And you put a stocking over it or something, right, as a filter? I mean, what is it?
If you wanted, in the old days when they didn't have media filters, what you could do is you could put a nylon stocking over it on the end, and it'll filter all the schmutz out of it to where it's not going to hurt the system. And where did that come from, Charlie? In the Northeast.
Oh, I thought
where
it came
I
from,
had a
I thought
house
it
in
came from
Lake
World War
Placid.
II, and you go up there with some
Probably.
nylons and chocolates in your attic, and
But
you know.
that was in the Northeast.
Okay.
So what people do up there, and Charlie, I don't know if you remember this, on your dryer vents in your house, they put nylon stockings over the exhaust vent, and instead of pumping the heat from the dryer to the outside, in Lake Placid, New York, this is the way it's done, you pump that heat that you're creating from your dryer into the house to help heat the house because it's so dang cold. And that nylon stocking you throw away after a while because it keeps all the lint from blowing into the house.
I thought of the
You did not
cold-
know that, being
I
from
did
New
not know that.
Hampshire?
I always thought when I grew up there, I grew on. I thought of the cold as an amenity. So,
Oh, okay, fine. Depends where you're from, yes.
well, when we were young, my mother would tell us we're not turning the heating on until Thanksgiving, so we'd have something to.
Oh,
be
I remember
thankful
those days. Put a sweater on, put some shoes on. You have more clothes on inside than you did outside.
for. It was years later before I realized it was because we didn't have the money. So, but anyway, yeah.
I understand.
So, all right, CJ has a question for you. He says we have a few intermittent drips of water from our AC condenser overflow line. The main AC condensate line is flowing fine. What would cause a few drips every few days, Tom?
It's going into the emergency overflow pan. It could be sweating, which means it's getting really cold. Or on some of the older pans, I don't know the age of the system, sometimes the pans start to rust out a little bit and these little tiny pinholes start to get created. In the old days, the bottom of the pan would eventually just go and you'd have to get a whole new evaporator coil. But the new ones are now lined, so it's usually at the connection. But usually it's either because it's getting real cold and a few drips, not a big deal. I wouldn't worry about it. By the time it hits that hot pan, it'll evaporate out. It doesn't even flow. It's just catching the little drips. So hopefully it's just cold and you don't have any rust spots. And the worst case is if it gets worse and worse and worse, then it's probably because the bottom of it's rusting out. But those are the older units, not the new ones.
We, the one that comes here in our office is right over my window. And I can always tell when we have a problem because I hear the water running outside and I call Chad. He goes up and he opens the thing and all is well again.
Okay, people do that. I understand. But I want you to know that it's a petri dish and a half, that water. And a lot of people will put that pipe on their lips and you'll end up getting sores and sores. No, I want to tell everybody who just heard this, Charlie. I hope Chad puts some kind of cloth down or something.
Yes, he does.
He protects himself, okay?
Chad's
I've had
60
people
something
call me
years
on
old.
my show.
Yeah, he's no idiot. So no, he knows better than
I know, but I want everybody to know you don't put it on your lips. Protect your lips, because I've had people call me on my show. My husband goes up and blows it out. He comes down the next day. He's got sores all over his mouth. Don't do that.
Got it. All right, I've got one more just came in from Carol, but I really think it's David, her husband. Because he wrote us a question, and we're actually going to be answering this in one of our AskTom videos. We're going to do as soon as we get off here in a minute. But we're going to go ahead and answer it here now for you too, you guys. They're long-time listeners, yours, long-time fans of yours. They wrote me a nice long email, and in fact, they just replaced their David Debian air conditioner. So to give you an idea how long they've been around. Okay. So Carol says she missed all suggestions. They're having a hard time choosing electric because the long and short of it is, Tom, they have somehow allowed their contract to lapse this time of year, which we all know is like not the time to be shopping for electric. So they're looking for your advice, Tom, on how to bridge that gap right now and how to choose the right one. And I know that you're a big fan of powertochoose.com or .org. They're the same thing. And the one that the state runs, the Public Utility Commission runs. But what is your advice in how you shop for that power?
Right now, power's still relatively cheap. We had a caller last weekend who got it, I think 6.1%. 6.1 cents per kilowatt hour, which is really still good. What I would tell you to do, and this is what I would do right now, I would go into powertochoose.org or .com. I like .org because I know I get a little paranoid. And you're going to have you 3 questions. They're going to ask you how much electricity you use, whether it's 500, 1,500, or 2,000. your average, just give them your average. You should know that from your bill. Number 2 is you want a fixed or variable rate. You want a fixed rate, period. Don't go variable at all. And thirdly is the length of time. I would put in there 4 months to 12 months and then click and see what they're giving you. And if you don't like the rates, you can go back and change that 4 months to 24 months. Do it 4 months to 12 months, then go back. And then if you don't like that, because that still keeps you in that same cycle, go to 0 to 6 months. And just go with the lowest one with that right now. I don't know if they'll do a 4 month. You can always do a month to month with anybody. You're going to pay a high rate through the summer, but you won't lock yourself in. But I would work my way down to the 6 month period, because if you go 6 months now, you'll be switching somewhere in January, I do believe. You'll have to do the numbers on the months. And that's a great time to go ahead and start locking in your yearly rates. I got a 24 month 30 days ago, and it was 4.4 cents per kilowatt hour for 24 months. Mm-hmm. Of course, the fees on top, they're going to vary, and there's no control over those. That's your delivery fees and all that. You just got to deal with that. That's the same for everybody. But the rates still are pretty good. So I'd take a look and start with 4 to 24 months, and then start narrowing it to where it gets to where it doesn't make sense, and lock in for a short time if you have to.
Mm-hmm. And I will tell you my experience with that whole power to choose thing, because for years I've resisted it, and I don't want to tell you.
Yes, you did. Even though you had a good friend that kept telling you, stop doing that for 16.1 cents kilowatt hour.
So when I finally decided to do it, the thing that I've learned, Tom, over the years with these power companies is the customer service mileage will vary a lot. I mean, some of them, they'll only send electronic bills, and if you want a paper bill, you have to fight for it.
True.
And they send you the paper bill, but because they're geared for electronic billing, the paper bill shows up in such a way that if you don't turn it around that day, you're going to be late. And so just, and then the other big takeaway from my experience following your advice and doing this, Tom, is don't get attached to your electric company, because you're going to change them every time. I have yet, in all the companies we've been through, I've yet to have one that makes me an offer to stay that's worth staying for. It never happened. It's the most bass.
I never have, not once in the hundreds
I've ever seen. In that they charge you more to renew than they charge you to come
Always.
on board. I'm like,
always, and I always say, so what are you going to charge? And they say this. I say, okay, I'll go look, and then buy it. They're done.
It's almost like they want to have a higher cost of acquisition than anyone else on the block. I don't know. It's just in business terms. It's stupid.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And can I give everybody a tip about the problem you were having with paper billing? Because I'm a paper bill guy. Mm-hmm. I had a company I chose once, and I would get the bill, I would send it out, the next day I would get a disconnect notice. And then we'd have to call and say, hey, what the heck's going on? It's because they had two different... Yes, yeah. I got it. So here's what I found out the deal was, is I have the paper bill sent to me, but I also have it emailed to me when the bill is actually generated. I just print the bill off my email, send it back to them. So by the time I get the paper bill, it just kind of confirms that what happened, and I never get a disconnect notice. So if that helps anybody, and I'm not an IT guy, but that helped me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're doing now. I get it, and it comes to me, and I email it to Sandy, and she cuts it, and then whatever. But anyway, that's the deal. So I hope.
Well, I don't have a middleman cutting mine.
Mm-hmm.
I have to
and by the way,
check myself.
Just in case Amy's watching, Chad's beautiful bride, or anyone else who's worried about the welfare of Chad, he just ran and said, yes, I wrap my hand around the pipe and blow into my hand, then I wash my hand thoroughly. You may want to wash your face too, Chad. Just saying.
Yeah, I'm worried about this, man. You're going to be doing those cold sore commercials for Blistex.
That's right. That's right. Right? People will wonder about your social choices. All right.
Yes.
So, listen, that's
Whatever
it for
works.
today. Let's wrap it up here. Land the airplane, as they say. If you got a question you want to get on now, all you got to do is go click on the Ask Tom button there at homeshowradio.com. You get you're faced with a choice. You can send us your question in writings with pictures and stuff, or you can record a video. We have a bunch of them backed up. I just haven't been able to get to them, and I'm sorry. We're going to get those in the next few weeks and get those on the show here. And what else? And that's the deal. Send it here, and then we'll answer it either on this show or we put out a new Ask Tom video every day that Tom loves to help people out, so we oblige him by posting a new one every day at homeshowradio.com. We post them on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel, where you're 50-50 chance you're seeing us on one or the other right now. But check the other one out, and you get the full Tom Tynan experience. We will be back again. I'll be with Tom this weekend because he's on the radio all weekend.
I am. And so join me Saturday, 9 to noon, and Sunday, 8 to 11. If you have any questions, you can call me. Even if you don't live in Houston, you can listen to the show. Go to homeshowradio.com and just, it's Central time, so you know what time we're in Houston. But you can listen, and you listen all the time, anytime, actually.
And, of course, there's your warm-up act.
Oh, Danny. He's the garden expert. He helps me with all. I'm a amateur gardener, and he is my go-to guy. He can be yours too, from 7 to 9, right before my show. He knows his plants and how to make them grow.
Fair enough. I'm Charlie. He's Tom. He's Tom. I'm Charlie, and he'll be on the radio. And I'll see you Sunday morning on Early Edition with Tom, and we'll see you on the website too. Thanks for being with us. I'll see you next Thursday.
Got a question? Ask Tom on Home Show Radio. Home Show Radio. Free advice from a pro who